Meanwhile, debate night between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton got testy at times.
Really?
Donald just criticized me for preparing for this debate. And yes, I did. And you know what else I prepared for? I prepared to be president. And I think that's a good thing.
I agree. She's got experience, but it's bad experience. And this country can't afford to have another 4 years of that kind of experience.
Wow. So a recent poll shows 70% of you think this election has brought out the worst in people. That's 7 of 10.
So how can you talk to family and friends about politics without getting into a bitter debate and keep it civil around the dinner table? Let's bring in the Archbishop of New York, Timothy Cardinal Dolan. Good morning.
How are you?
It's got to be an emergency to bring you in for this.
I love being with you all.
That's great to see you.
Thanks
for letting me sit next to you.
She gave you a big hug to walk in. I didn't have a choice.
I'm not I love this man, and we need you. America needs you.
Thank you. Well, we do need some healing, and we need some unity and reconciliation. Whether I'm the man to bring it, I don't know. I should try.
We all should. Called you into our studio today to give
but the question you asked is, I hear it everywhere. I go around listening to a lot of people. Look, I don't know if you know this or not. I'm a student of American history. I was able to get my degree in that, so I know that bitter, fractious, contentious elections have been part of the American experiment. We know that's nothing new. This one does seem to raise the mercury quite a bit, doesn't it? And I think what bothers a lot of people is the personal attacks. I didn't watch the debate. I watched the Mets game. Okay, much better.
You were the one.
But what I hear people say is they didn't talk about issues. They attacked one another on some things that everybody is tired about, all right? Did we hear him talk about substantial revival of the economy? Did we hear them talk about substance in foreign policy? Did we hear him talk about some of the burning issues, like the culture of life, like immigrants? I don't think we heard that much, and people are yearning for that. That, I think, Ainsley, to answer your question, at our kitchen tables, what do parents tell their kids? I'd like to think they tell their kids, you can disagree heartily on the issues, never attack a person, never question motives. I'd like to think maybe this will lead in a revival of that civility. I don't know.
Right, but there's so much at stake, and so they're pulling out all the stops. Now, let's fast forward a month or two, and of course it would be after the election, if we're talking about Thanksgiving, but when you're around the kitchen table with your family, invariably, that uncle right over there voted for somebody I didn't vote for. How do you handle that? Because after a couple of ciders or whatever, people...
Hey, are you a member of my family or what? We do that too.
People lose the inhibition and then they just let it all hang out.
You know, one of the things I think we ought to do is why should we be embarrassed that there's political disagreement? That's a tribute to the vitality of American democracy, no? That how many countries in the world could actually sit around a table?
So you're okay with
retribution? I don't mind good, hearty, hot debate and controversy, as long as it doesn't, as long as it's not reduced to attacks on people.
7% of Americans say they've lost a friendship because of this political process.
Isn't that, we should lose friendships over important things, like the baseball teams and all.
Exactly, yeah.
Not about politics.
Right, should be Red Sox, Yankees.
Yeah,
that
there you go.
Thing.
You know, nothing is worth losing a friend over. Nothing is worth damaging charity and civility. That's what we have to. That's what we have to think about.
So the bottom line is, we can disagree, but we still need to love each other.
There you got it, don't you think?
Sure. Well, I almost said Ambassador Cardinal. Here's the other thing: is we're talking about race relations nonstop. Maybe for the first time in my lifetime. We didn't talk about much in the 80s and the 90s, turn of the century. We're talking about different issues. Now race is everywhere, from law enforcement to a society. People sitting down can't decide whether America's the right country or not. We had our New York City Council, half of them sit down and not take the Pledge of Allegiance. Where do you go with that?
Well, for one thing, once again, I'm with you. I had thought, those of us who lived through the 60s thought maybe that's when it all came to a peak, and maybe that's behind us, especially with the election of an African-American president. Now it's front and center again. What are we going to do? Are we going to get depressed and discouraged? Or are we going to say, hey, thank God we've got a robust civic society where we can talk about painful issues and where things that need to be discussed and debated courteously in the public square, we can do that. I'm with you, though. When that gets mean, when that gets violent, And when that begins to take on, what would you say, attacks on things we cherish, like the national anthem or like our patriotic.
Does it bother you?
It does. It
so
does.
when you take a
now,
knee
look,
during the national anthem, it bothers you?
Look, I'm in a sacred enterprise where ritual and symbols are very important. They remind us of the divine. And so do our patriotic rituals. And I worry that if we begin to question those and chip away at them, well, then the common ground that we got that allows for civility and compassionate public discourse, that's going to erode even further, and we don't need that.
So if Colin Kaepernick were here on the couch with us today, what would you say to him?
I'd say, nice to meet you. I would share your passion for this. Can we talk about this? Can I pray with you about it? But could I encourage you maybe for something that is so sacred to this country? We need your witness more than ever to unite us and bring us together, not to further divide us.
One of the October rituals here in New York City is the annual Al Smith dinner.
I'm practicing sitting between two.
That's right. Coming up on October the 20th, you will have on one side Hillary Clinton and on the other side Donald Trump. I remember 4 years ago, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were both hilarious.
They were, yeah, they were. And that, of course, is the purpose of the evening. You know the tradition of the Al Smith dinner. You know who Al Smith is, right? He was the first Catholic to run for president in 1928. Trounced by Herbert Hoover. Historians would say probably because of anti-Catholic bigotry. A tremendously successful governor of New York State, and they called him the Happy Warrior. And he gave us, even in defeat, he gave us a great example of what we were just talking about. A sense of humor, a joy, trying to bring people together, trying to find the common ground. So one of my predecessors, Francis Cardinal Spellman, said after Governor Smith died, why don't we start an annual dinner where we bring politicians together in a real climate of amity? And every 4 years, that is hyped up when the two candidates come together. Except for the debates, it's the only time in the political season that the two candidas come together at the Al Smith dinner, sponsored by the Archdiocese of New York.
Hosted by his great-grandson?
Al Smith III would be the host, and he's the chairman of the Al Smith board. The Al Smith Foundation, which is a tremendous supporter of Catholic charities, and especially women and children, following Governor Smith. Well, it's a great, a traditional title for a priest, and they especially give it to the high priest in Rome, the Pope, is a pontifex, a bridge builder. We're supposed to build bridges, most of all between humanity and divinity. But on that day, I kind of feel like a bridge because I'll be sitting between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, usually people that don't get along. But on that evening, we pray there's a sense of joy, self-deprecating humor, and bringing out what's best in America.
Well, let me ask you, do these guys, and now this case a woman, will they sometimes pull you aside and go, listen, I'm having a little problem here, or pray for me? Do they ever pull you aside and ask for advice? I've
only been through one of these, the last one in 2012 when it was Barack Obama and Governor Romney. Yeah, we'd have a little time together, and I'm always moved by the political candidates who admit they need prayer, who will ask for prayers, who will sometimes say this has been a tough season. Yeah.
Are you expecting that this year?
I don't know. I'm ready for it. I'll have a couple martinis beforehand.
Absolutely, because we know that Donald Trump loves the Bible, so you'll have a lot to discuss.
So we hear.
Absolutely. So how do you feel about preachers pushing a candidate from the pulpit?
They're not allowed to do that, are they?
Well, I mean, some ministers are.
We Catholics aren't. We have always taken seriously the fact that we can preach issues. We can talk about principles
like
and
abortion.
Values. You got it. We can talk about issues and the principles and ethics and morality that guide us. We should stay away from supporting candidates, all right? So there's a big difference.
Would you like to see everybody have that? Would you like to see
I think so. I don't know why we Catholics take that, what seems to be a principle that America reverences, namely that the altar should stay away from an overt intrusion into politics. We take that seriously. Other religions seem to get away with it. I don't know why. So my priests, myself, oh boy, will we talk about virtue? Will we talk about morality? Will we talk about issues? we shy from getting partisan. You know the difference. Political is a noble thing. You talk about the guiding vision and virtues of our country. Partisanship means you get particularly supportive of a given candidate or a given party. That we shy away from. Who was the great one on this? John Paul II. Okay, so boy, you talk about in the widest, most noble way, a political pope who spoke about virtues, who spoke about the guiding principles of faith and freedom and the dignity of the human person.
But famously worked with politicians.
But would work with anybody, whether they be to the left or the right.
I was under the impression that I thought that preachers were not allowed to. They're allowed to talk about the issues, but not endorse a candidate at the pulpit because they would lose their tax exemption if they did that. And I think legally, exactly.
I've heard that too. I don't know if that's accurate.
Why don't you try it? Pick somebody and see if there's any blowback. Right?
Don't get my friend in trouble. No, don't do that. Do not listen to Brian.
Cardinal, I mentioned abortion because as a faithful Catholic, I hear that a lot on Sundays, but I also hear a lot about immigrants.
Right.
And those who are in the country and undocumented, and how we should be very helpful to them because, you know, they're people too.
Sure. Here we got it, Steve. Thanks for asking. Again, what's the guiding overarching principle here? The dignity of the human person and the sacredness of human life, okay? Now, wherever that's attacked, you know the church is going to stand up and say, be careful. Right. We are really less than the creature that God intended us to be. And there are different ways that that's under attack. For us as Catholics, we feel one of the most blatant ways that's under attack is when the very life of the most innocent, fragile creature, the baby in the womb, is under attack. So we feel extraordinarily strong about that. That doesn't mean that's the only issue. You brought one up, Steve, as far as the immigrant. The immigrant is made in the image and likeness of God. He or she demands dignity and respect. Does that mean we can't have very, very careful, strong protection of borders? No, that's a right, too. That's a human right that we need to protect. The balance comes in doing that without getting spiteful or destructive of the dignity of the human person.
So you're not a bad Catholic if you say, I'm a little concerned that the enemy, in this case would be ISIS, Al-Qaeda, is trying to infiltrate into a
you would not be a bad Catholic at all. You'd say, I am so proud of our American tradition, which, by the way, is consonant with the Jewish-Christian tradition of welcoming the refugee. I'm so proud of that I'm worried that's being compromised by perhaps an excessively fluid policy
because
that is not scrupulous enough. But so we have to protect our country is also the protection of the dignity of the human person and the sacredness. So what do you got? You got sometimes conflicting values. You got a balance. So you know what the great saints and scholars say is the greatest virtue that we need at this time of the year? Prudence. Right. Prudence, which is pretty much asking God for right judgment. Right. Because we got tough decisions to make.
And the greatest saint ever? Drew Brees?
The greatest saint ever?
It has to be Drew Brees.
Drew Brees.
Or the Saints, New Orleans Saints.
You have got, I was going to say Stan Musial, but you...
Absolutely.
What about, I hear a lot from people in the community just coming up to me and saying they're concerned for the direction of the country.
I am too.
All right, why? What do we do about that?
You know what now you're not going to be surprised. Different people are going to, you have people on this couch that are going to give you different answers. My answer should surprise no one. I think we're in trouble because we've forgotten God. All right, God is no longer part of the equation. Belief in God is ridiculed. Religion is being reduced to superstition. And religion, which by its definition is to accent everything that's good and noble and sacred in the human person and the human enterprise, is now being, in the minds of some, is being reduced to an act of hate and violence. And that's terrible when we eliminate God from the public square. And that's part of when you've got the father of our country say that democracy cannot flourish without a strong religious base, as George Washington said, that's under attack now.
Sure. Cardinal, tell us a little bit about the Pilgrimage of Mercy.
Oh, thanks for asking. You know this is a year of mercy. Now, look, every day, every second is one of mercy in the eyes of God. Pope Francis is shrewd. He's a good teacher. He's a good Jesuit. He says, yeah, but every once in a while we need good reminders because we're tempted to forget it, like mercy. So he's declared a year of mercy. One of the things you do in a year of mercy is make a pilgrimage. The idea of pilgrimage is important to Jews, Muslims, and Christians, okay? You go somewhere on a journey to remind us of the journey of life, the journey back to heaven. A lot of people come to St. Patrick's Cathedral. We here in the Archdiocese are going to go down to the shrine of our Immaculate Mother Mary in Washington, D.C., the National Shrine. We love to go to the home of our Mother. okay? Those are the for us as Catholics, those are the most popular shrines in the world. Lourdes, Fatima, Knock, Guadalupe. Here in the United States, we got the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington. So I'm going to have a couple hundred pilgrims. Brooklyn had some. Rockville Center had some. Newark across the Hudson had some.
And where are you heading?
October 15th.
We're going October 15th. We're going to take busloads of people down for prayer, camaraderie, the Mass, the Sacrament of Penance, you name it. You're welcome to come.
God bless you.
Thank you.
so
We
much
need
for
it,
being
don't
here.
we? Thanks for having me on.
Great to see you.